Today is December 13th, 2022. This is the meeting of the Finance Committee. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and
and justice for all. This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20. And on June 16th, 2021, Governor Baker signed the act relative to extending certain provisions, certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting is being recorded. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. We get to start off our budget for fiscal 24 meetings tonight. It feels like we just wrapped the other ones up just not too long ago, but here we stand again. So I'd like to start off the meetings. We're going to start with Marine Services, and Chris is here. So Chris, if you could jump on, introduce yourself, and welcome to be our first budget hearing today. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. My name is Christopher Leonard. I am the Director of Marine Services. The Marine Services Department is the Harbor Master Department. Well, these are things that I oversee. So it would be the Harbor Master Department, the Shellfish Department, the Wharfinger, for all the commercial fishing boats that we have down at our town dock, the Hicks Bridge boat ramp, and also the 88 boat ramp. So those are all the things that are underneath my umbrella. And I sent an email out that has the Shellfish budget, because the Shellfish budget and then the Marine Services budget are two separate budgets. The Shellfish budget comes from the general fund, and the Marine Service budget is paid by the Enterprise Fund for waterway user fees and other things that we collect money for. But if we want to take a look at the Shellfish budget, which is 295, I also have for that just kind of a budget memo that goes through everything. So if there's any questions, I'll just start. The Shellfish Department's operating budget is submitted under accordance of the FY24 municipal budget guideline provided by the town administrator of a 2.5% budget increase. Non-union employee salaries and wage costs get a 2% increase per year, which is myself, we're non-union. The overall FY24 Shellfish budget is $86,677, representing an overall decrease of $946 over the FY23 budget. After talking with our town administrator, we agreed to then decrease it another $500. So the overall decrease from the FY23 budget to this year's budget is $1,446 less than the previous budget. So what we're looking at now is a brief summary represented in each line item. So for personnel, the Shellfish Department consists of 2 full-time employees and 6 part-time employees. The Shellfish Department has electric bills for our shared office building, and we also have a shellfish hatchery / work building that we need electricity in. The Shellfish Department runs 3 vessels, 2 of which are patrol relay transport skiffs. And then we have another larger 24-foot transplant vessel that we use when we do our shellfish relay. This boat being 24 feet, it's a 24-foot Carolina skiff with a 90-horse outboard. We can safely fit 80 bushels and 4 people on it when we go out and we plant quahogs. Just to let you know that we were able to plant 5,000 bushels of quahogs into the Westport River this year from a grant from the Manton Foundation. So that does not cost the town anything for us to go ahead and plant those 5,000 bushels. The money that we use to plant those 5,000 bushels is for purely shellfish planting, purely shellfish in which we buy. Any of that money that we get from that grant does not go towards salaries, gas, oil, equipment. The money that is used is 100% is used for buying shellfish for the Westport River. Then we also have a building repair. We have a shared office with the harbor master building and the shellfish nursery building. We try to keep it in pretty good condition of just the weathered shingles with the white trim. It is in a historic district, so we do have glazed windows in the building, and we just try to do our best to keep it tidy. We have vehicle repair and maintenance. We have one Chevy 2500 pickup truck that we use for shellfish patrols, boat hauling, and we also use that truck to pick up the quahogs for our transplant relays. We get a better price if I take that truck and then I personally hook it to the trailer, load the trailer, and bring the whole show to Westport, where we unload the bushels onto the boat, and then we go on site. So that truck is definitely necessary for that. Also, we have 3 boat trailers that need maintenance. They're in and out of the salt water. They need bearings and rollers and all kinds of other things like that. For the advertising line, we have 81 acres of aquaculture in Westport. And when the aquaculture leases expire, they must be advertised in the public. So we need some money for that advertisement. For tuition, we like to keep everybody CPR and first aid trained, because we are pretty much the first line of defense if we ever get a 911 call, where we are the first responders. We work with the police department and the fire department, but usually we are either trying to figure out a place where we're going to pick up a police officer, an EMT if needed, but sometimes we rendezvous with the EMTs at the closest location, and so we need to keep our training up. Let's take a look. Portable toilets. We share a portable toilet at the town dock. Internet phone service, just kind of the basic stuff. Postage for rules and regulation changes and mailing out aquaculture licenses. The gasoline and oil, I believe, was $2,500, and I talked with Jim, and we're going to try to do it with $2,000 for the gas and oil for the year. And office supplies, just small office supplies. We do print violation tickets, and we print rule books and the licenses for when people go to the town clerk to purchase a new shellfish license. They're yearly licenses, so they need to be renewed. And everybody gets a rule book when they sign up and get a license. We have some uniforms too. We try to keep everybody looking shipshape as best as we can. So $500 for new polo shirts and hats and things like that. We do have, we are part of the Massachusetts Shellfish Officers Association. So we do have some dues for that. Long-term upcoming expenditures. We could probably use a new 40-horse outboard for our boat. One of these years, we just try to keep the new outboard purchases in rotation. So we're not looking to buy 3 new outboards in one year. It's usually the oldest, most clapped out outboard. When it's time, we'll probably put in something for town meeting. And usually the outboards are going to run less than $10,000. And the money from that would come from the Municipal Waterways Fund, which is boat excise tax. Half of the excise tax goes into the general fund. It's roughly about $22,000, and the other half of that excise tax goes into municipal waterways, and we're able to purchase outboards, trucks, and things that we need for law enforcement purposes. But overall, the Shellfish Department is running good in a bare bones budget, and that's about it. If there's any questions, for the Shellfish Department, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chris, thanks. Quick question for you. Thank you for the memo and the presentation. It's all very well laid out. Much appreciated. So it looks like your decreases that you're talking about seem to be coming really from two line items. So your assistant department head, and then you referred to the gas and oil. So is your assistant department head, is that time, where's that decrease coming from? Is that less hours worked?
No, the decrease is coming from after the town meeting and the approval of the budget. I'll put my budget in, and then when the budget comes back, sometimes the numbers aren't exactly correct. And so we had an overage with that, which Nicole was able to say, hey, there's too much money in here. And I said, okay, that's great. Let's get back on track, because we don't want to have any bad numbers, especially when it comes to salaries. We don't want to have anybody overpaid or underpaid. So the decreases are coming from that discrepancy. So that money that is the overage is just going to end up probably back to the town.
All right, small number. I was just curious. So thank you. And I see Cindy has her hand up. So go ahead, Cindy.
Well, along that same vein, maybe it's the same answer. I mean, it looks like your own salary. Did you trim your own salary like $1,500?
We did trim, both the assistant department head and the department head both had salaries trimmed to where they needed to be with the 2%. It was just, it was one of the things. The budget came back and were inflated.
Rather than increasing 2%, you took a 2% cut.
Pretty much. What happened? Let's just say I was supposed to be paid $86,000.
Right.
But the line item had me for like 90 or something like that.
Okay.
So we did figure in a 2% raise consecutively every year that we've been doing this. So I did get a 2% raise this year. It was just there was too much money in the account.
Okay. So I know Nicole's on the line here. Nicole, how does that happen?
Okay, so what happened was a few years ago when they were splitting between Shellfish and the enterprise, the salaries, there was a miscalculation done by the previous town administrator. So this was just correcting to make the salary 50-50. So at one time it was like 60-40. So then there was too much in the enterprise, but then we were just level funding the budget from year to year. So there was actually too much money in the enterprise fund. It would never catch up. So to make it 50-50, we did the adjustment now.
Okay. All right,
Nicole.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Cindy?
No.
Nope. Okay, thanks. Bob, you have your hand up.
Chris, regarding the recent paving at the point,
Yes.
I've heard comments both pro and con. What is your feeling and your thoughts?
Well, the paving did not come out of my budget. That came out of the highway department budget. For me, I think that it's a positive thing because we can now stripe the road or the parking spots instead of people kind of double parking or triple parking. There might be some upset on the way that it looks right now, but that is the first coat, and they're going to do a top coat, finish coat on that. So it's going to look a little better because it's a little gravelly, but the highway department was able to take a massive kind of indentation in the parking lot, which was holding a lot of water, and it created a perpetual puddle. And I'm not a hydrologist, but if you go through a puddle a bunch of times, it displaces all kinds of stuff. So the way that it is right now, I'm really pleased with it, and I look forward to seeing paved because a lot of that was just dirt, and so there wasn't orderly parking, and so now we'll have it paved, signed, and lined, and we will stop any of the double parking that was happening in the roundabout. Because if we need to get an emergency vehicle down there and turned around, and people are just kind of parking wherever, where people have to do 3-point turns to turn around at the end of the termination there, it's just bad for business for everybody. So I'm very pleased with what's going on and the progress moving forward there.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Bob, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, one of the, have to do with paving, Chris.
Sure.
With the material that they put down now, once they put a finishing course on top of this, some people who live down there have told me this will make all of the water go onto the sidewalk as well as in their property. Are you ever observed?
Bob, can we keep our questions related to Chris's specific budgets?
Well,
Does this relate to, how does this
he's
relate to
down
the
there,
shellfish?
Karen, every day, and I'm not. And this is an issue that's going to have to be dealt with the highway department. But as an observer, objective observer, I'm looking for feedback from him and his people regarding what is down there now. Have you been there yourself?
I haven't been down there lately, but I'd like to keep us focused on the budgets that we're discussing tonight and not go into other topics that, you know, may not be directly related. It's certainly a question when the highway department comes in to speak with them about. But I'm not sure it's a question for Chris at this moment. Bob, do you have any other questions for
No,
Chris's budget? Okay.
I was
Thank
looking
you.
for an objective observer.
We can certainly talk to Chris at some other point. Chris, if you want to answer the question quickly, I don't want to cut you off.
Sure,
but,
I can answer the question quickly.
I'd like to not spend an enormous amount of time answering it.
I can give you a quick answer. As of right now, there are 3 areas in which the water is dispersed. There's a culvert near the Paquachuk. There's a culvert near the Leech Marina in the corner of our property where the harbor master office is. And the third discharge of water is just down off the end of the street, off the dock into the water. There is pooling water, mainly where they did relieve the indentation that was pooling at the end of the street. But if it were to run, let's just say north, back up the street, there is a culvert there that is then connected to the second one, and it drains out near my office. So in good running condition with those culverts unobstructed, the water is going to end up in the river as opposed to back feeding into somebody's property. We do have eyes on there, myself and Gary Tripp, who are down there all the time. And I've specifically said to Gary to take a look at where water's running. And I've talked to some people down there, and if there are any problems, they can contact me or the highway department, and we'd be happy to help them out. But as long as those culverts are not blocked up, the water is going to run. And we do our best because there are grates down there, and we do have leaves, and we do relieve the leaves from the grates to keep things flowing as best we can when we see them blocked.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Gary, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Chris. So you spoke of I have a couple of questions. You spoke
Sure.
of the 3 boats that you currently have in service and
Yes.
An additional engine that you're looking for. Is that to be mounted on one of the boats you have? And are you looking to retire any of these boats? What's the use?
No.
How long have these boats how long have they been online, and what are the hours on them? I mean, do you have that kind of information?
We like to, yeah, we do get the hours at the end, but usually around 1,000 to 1,500 hours, we like to retire them. Also, if they're older than eight years, we really don't like to go more than 8 years on an outboard, because sometimes these shellfish skiffs turn into low water rescue vessels. I had a call 2 Saturdays ago at about 10:30 at night for somebody near Hillcrest Acres hearing an outboard, and they very clearly heard that the outboard hit, and it sounded like somebody was on a mud flat aground. Now, for me to take my Harbor Master boat up there, I could take it up there and wave from the channel. So we like to have our boats in tip top, because you never know when you're going to have to hop in one of these boats and go and deal with that situation. Luckily, I was down ready to take the skiff out, and the person called me and they said, it sounds like they got off and they're heading left. And I said, left towards the back eddy and Hillcrest? And they said, yes. I said, okay, I'm going to wait and see if I can see them. Luckily, I was able to make contact with these people and make sure that everybody was okay. But to say that these boats merely deliver shellfish is untrue. So we like to swap the engines out probably after the 8 years or the 1,500 hours. Right now, we are running a Honda that is getting close to that on the original aluminum patrol skiff that the town had. And that would be the outboard that I would be looking to upgrade.
So would that be a capital request?
I believe at this point in time, it would be less than $10,000.
Okay, so the boats that you have in service, you don't see any, well, not at least in fiscal 24, of you retiring them or needing a new one or?
Nope.
Okay, and then the second question I had was, the condition of the dock. I know that you've met with us in the past and you've kind of did the best you can down there to patchwork and do
Sure.
things so that it's not a public safety issue. So
That's right.
where is that right now? Are you still having to do that? Obviously.
Yes. So we have some fuel trucks that come down there, and it's mainly the wooden planking. As soon as the truck that's too heavy, like a fuel truck, these 1/2 ton and 3/4 ton trucks, no problem. Once you get a 2 or 3 axle truck that's carrying some serious weight and they drive on there, we do have some collapse and breaking of just the deck planking, not the actual underneath infrastructure. When we're talking about serious beams that are underneath there. So in conjunction with, I was able to purchase a pallet of decking, and we haven't gone through it yet, but we just replace if it's rotted, if a truck crashes through it, there's an issue. And I'm still sitting on about 1/2 a pallet of those wooden planks. We did have some issues at the end of the main dock. They were concrete issues where there was some collapsing that was happening underneath. And the highway department luckily could come down there, and they did all of the, we'll just say, excavation work of removing the concrete. And my only cost was just the cost of the actual concrete and maybe some rebar. So the highway department was able to help with that. For any sort of major dock reconstruction, that usually happens after, let's just say, about 30 years. We need to do something major. We would look to get Seaport grant money to go ahead and to do any sort of major thing like that. What we would, the next thing that we would probably want to have is just a surveyor come and to take a look at the actual structure and say, is this safe? And that's probably coming in the next 5 years or so. I go under there. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I can take a look at low tide underneath the dock and say, wow, that's scary. Something like that.
Well, I mean,
I do poke around under there.
Yeah, you talk about trucks breaking through some of the wood. I would seem to think that if in fact you were to do a study, would have to have an engineering firm come in and look at this. That would cost an X amount of money, X amount of dollars. But I think that maybe the longer we wait to do this, it even get more serious, if you will. Where it could be a total collapse, and then the town could potentially be liable for some kind of issue down there. But I don't know if that's built into your capital plan to go ahead and look at that and make that part of your maybe 5-year plan or 10-year plan. But I would just make the recommendation that I know that we've talked about this in the past and it's been a few years, that maybe it's included in the capital plan, so that where the town knows that this is something that needs to be addressed. Because, let's face it, if a truck goes down there, like I said, and falls through one of those beams, we're liable. And we wouldn't
absolutely.
I just would make the recommendation that it gets included. Whether it gets funded is something totally different, but at least it's on the radar. But that's all I have. Great job. I think you do a great job down there, and it's definitely the department is an asset to the town.
Yeah, sure thing. Next capital improvement sheets that come through, I will be sure to put that just a structural survey, just so we know who's who with that whole thing, because we don't really want to be looking at a major overhaul. Right now, I mean, from what I can see, the frame looks good, but we're just dealing with the planking on the top that is getting a little punky here and there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Gary. Lawrence, you're next.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a quick question. If I heard correctly near the beginning, you said you had adjusted your anticipated fuel costs for the coming year downward. I was curious to know how that came about, because it seems like fuel costs are rising everywhere. So I was curious to know how you guys are planning that you'll be needing less.
Well, it was a recommendation from the town administrator, and it was something that, I know that the town needs money, and even if it's $500, I'm happy to help where I can. We did have rising fuel costs, and maybe next year I'm going to change my tune. But we have finished the relay right now, and I do not believe that we have gone negative in gas and oil in this department. Of course, we're going to pick up again in the springtime, and we're going to see where we lie. But until then, we're just going to try to run it as is, and maybe I'll change my tune next year and say, yeah, we need that $500.
Chris, let me just help you interject a little bit. So the fiscal 23 budget had gas and oil of 1,000. Then your fiscal 24 budget had 2,500. So you were having an increase, but it sounds like you decreased it to 2,000. So you went down from the original budget by 500, but you're still up. So that might help answer, Lawrence, your question. So it is up, but just down from the original budget that was submitted.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thanks for that historical.
Yeah,
tracking.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Lawrence?
No, nothing for me. Thanks. That was
Right,
great.
thank
That's
you.
great.
Thank you. Cindy, go ahead.
I just had one more follow-up. Chris, can you talk a little bit about the issue with the dredging under the Hicks Bridge? So I know it's a little bit more in limbo now, but the financing of that, my understanding has always been whether or not the Army Corps of Engineers does that sooner or later. The town is still on the hook for about $1 million. Is that correct?
I cannot answer that question.
Oh, okay. All right.
The question's it's not in my kind of line item budgets.
Okay. All right.
So
Jim,
yeah,
Jim, do you know that, would the town be on the hook for about $1 million of that dredging cost?
Yeah, there's a couple of options, and the least expensive alternative was filling in a couple of the deeper holes on either side of the bridge, and I think they're backing off that alternative right now. But yes, it's going to be expensive somewhere.
But we don't know what the timeline is of that, right?
We don't. We're actually setting up a meeting after the first of the year to go over their latest report.
Okay. All right. So, but it's just something that we may have to put on our radar screen at some point. Okay. Thank you.
Is there a grant for that or something? Maybe a grant? Oh.
The Army Corps was going to pick up, I think, 2/3, and one third was going to be picked up by the town.
And that 1/3, that 1/3 of the more expensive option was $1 million, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What's the purpose of dredging this?
So this started before my time, but I think essentially they're concerned about the the old debris under the bridge impeding the flow of the river and compromising some of the shellfish beds on the north side of Hicks Bridge. They feel if the flow under the bridge was a little bit better, that the water would be cleaner, and that would support more shellfish in a healthier environment.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, I think any other question? I think we're ready for you to move on to your next budget, the Marine Services.
Yeah, yeah, sure thing. So the Marine Services budget submitted under accordance to the FY24 municipal budget guideline provided by the town administrator of a 2.5% budget increase. Non-union employee salaries get a 2% increase per year. The overall FY24 Marine Service budget is $125,247, representing an overall decrease of $3,657 under the FY23 budget. So what we're looking at here again is this decrease because the Shellfish Department and the Marine Services split salaries. And in just trying to get back to our baseline, there was too much money taken out. So we're going back to where we should be, as Nicole explained earlier. A brief summary of what is represented in each line as follows. The Marine Services Department consists of 2 full-time employees and 6 part-time employees. The Marine Service Department has electric bills for the town dock, a shared office building, and the lighting of the 88 boat ramp. For equipment and repair, we run 4 vessels in the Marine Services, 2 rescue patrol vessels, and then 2 pump out and patrol vessels. All vessels have safety, electrical, mechanical, and painting upkeep. We also have 9 town moorings that need to be serviced yearly. We need to dive on those to make sure that we're renting a good mooring. Some of those may need replacing. In addition, we have dewatering equipment, battery jump packs, tools, and an AED that needs upkeep. For building and wharf repair, we have our office building as well as the town dock that needs constant repair. We share that one Chevy 2500 pickup truck that we use for harbor master patrols, beach rescues, boat hauling, and we have the 4 trailers that are underneath those 4 boats. Of course, when we have any sort of hurricane activity, we pull town boats quickly. So we need to have our trailers in good working order. We have some waterway rule changes that come up from time to time that need to be advertised in the newspaper and for a public hearing. That's either expanding, an example would be expanding or deleting no wake zones, but it seems like slow no wake zones are getting more popular. Every year we have to keep up to date with CPR, first aid, and we look for any kind of extending education classes that would benefit us. We have 1 year-round portable toilet at the town dock that we share with the Shellfish Department, but we also have 2 seasonal porta-johns, one of which that is put at the 88 boat ramp and one at the Hicks Bridge boat ramp. And those usually go in sometime around Memorial Day or sometimes a little bit before, and they go all the way through Columbus Day or longer. We try to accommodate our friends that are rowing out of the Hicks Bridge area. And if we do have nice weather, we try to extend it as long as we can to offer sanitation services for people at the boat ramps. We have a telephone and internet in our office. Every year for postage, we send out about 1,350 waterway user fees that go out, and that helps support our budget for our enterprise fund. We have the gas and oil for 4 boats and 1 truck, office supplies for just daily upkeep and bill paying and whatever we need, copy machines and printing in the office. We do have a yearly printing of waterway user fee forms and envelopes that we send out in that April, as well as rule and regulation books, violation tickets for the department. Uniforms, we like to look professional with new polo shirts that aren't sun bleached and torn and stained. We belong to the Massachusetts Cape and Islands Harbor Master Association. And we also look for any sort of class that would enrich our personnel. Miscellaneous expenses, this is a big one. It's about $10,000, or let's take a look for the Marine Service. Yeah, $10,350. And so that would be for our insurance for hull liabilities. In case we were to go out on some sort of rescue and we were to lose a boat in the surf, we have insurance for that. And especially we did get a new Harbor Master boat, a 26-foot aluminum Pacific boat. And of course, when we're dealing with something that's that new, the insurance is going to go up. In talking to the insurance company that we do use, we used to get away with, I don't know, $6,000, $7,000, sometimes less. So we got 5, 7, and the insurance company will not do policies for less than $10,000. So that's a pretty big expense for our miscellaneous hull liability. Long-term expenditures, we're just looking at the town dock again for a possible bulkhead at the mud dock, some more planking, and some of the chinking of the granite blocks that are actually underneath the main dock that's down at the point. But the Marine Service Harbor Master Department is in good running conditions on a bare bones budget.
Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have any questions for Chris about the Marine Services budget? Chris, I think we got all our questions out at the first budget for you.
Sure, that's great. But if you think of any or need any explanation or anything, you can email me at the Harbor Master Department. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Great. Chris, I want to thank you again. As I was thinking of this, I think I might have even said this last year. And you might have been one of the first budget meetings for us last year. I seem to recall, but you're articulate, you know your budget really well. Your presentation was excellent. Your memo was excellent. So I'd like to thank you for what you do. You set the bar really high for every other department that's going to come in. So thank you for another tremendous presentation from you. So thank you.
All righty. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
All right.
If there's no other questions, have a good night. And
All right.
thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
All righty. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right. So continuing with our budgets, we have Sue Brayton, who's the treasurer collector, who's here to talk about some budgets. So hi, Sue. Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you. Might as well start with the departmental budget. And
Are you going to present at all, Sue, or are we just going to follow along like we've been doing? I think we can do that because we all have your budgets.
I think if you can just follow along, I
Okay.
have it on my system here,
Okay. Which one are you starting with?
the department budget.
Okay. And that is called
FY 24 budget 147.
147. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
And my personnel, I just put in the 2% increase as requested. You do see some changes there with the sick buyback, certification, career, educational, etc. And that is because I have Stella back in my office now. I am finally, for the first time since I've been treasurer collector, have full staff all trained at once. First time since 2020 when I started as treasurer collector. So, but she has been here for over 20 years and therefore is eligible for some of these additional things in the budget that a lot of the other girls are not. They don't have the longevity, etc., that they qualify for yet. I did try to reduce a few little areas under expenses. reduced equipment and so forth. Some of my fees I tried to keep about the same. I did allow for some increases, for example, postage, printing, and things of that nature, which I anticipate will be going up like everything else. One area of concern that I do have in my budget is tax taking. I believe I did increase that a bit, and that is for the actual placing the liens on the property, not for, I have a revolving account for pursuing the liens once they're on into tax title. I do have one person who has 55 properties in town, and he has not paid for the last 3 quarters, and I'm looking at putting him into tax title, and it's $105 recording fee per property. So I actually may come up a little short this year to do that. And I'm a little concerned with the economy being the way it is, that I may need additional funds if people don't pay. The other thing that I did do, which was just a switch on the line, is professional services. The prior administrator had put that in as professional services. It's actually software. So I moved that down to the line item that it should be under computer software. That is actually for the Zobrio program that we have. So I eliminated it on one line and added it down below.
Great. Sue, quick question for you. On line 10, you've got, it says payroll / benefits / tax title.
Yes.
And there's a number of 60,949, and it doesn't look like it had anything in the previous budget. Is that what can you explain that line?
That's my new payroll benefits tax title. That's the new title for the clerk in the office.
Oh, that's the personnel. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Thank
her
you.
salary.
Great. Well, congratulations on being fully staffed for the first time.
It's exciting.
So you must do you get to go home at night now?
I've been trying to keep my hours around just over 40, 45 hours instead of 60 hours like I was doing originally.
Good. Does anyone have any questions for Sue on this first budget? Gary?
So, thanks, Sue. Last year, I think it was the last town meeting, we appropriated the revolving fund?
The revolving fund for
Yeah,
pursuing the properties and tax title.
right. So if you have any additional issues this year, and let's say that the budget doesn't get increased, I believe you can raise and appropriate that on the recap. Any additional costs that you incur can be placed on the recap and Nicole can correct me if I'm wrong, for any type of fees that the town would incur for the taking of property. And that includes legal, and includes what have you. That's one of the only things that can be put on the recap. And I think Nicole maybe can confirm that. So I would say maybe we don't worry about it too much, maybe in the budget, because there is also that mechanism that you can use.
All right.
Under the law.
Yeah, we'll see at the end if there's any, I'll try to move things around if I have to, or, if there's any extra in, say, office supplies or something like that, I'll try using that also, switch it up, get permission to switch it over, things of that nature.
So has the process been working? Have you used the revolving account yet for any properties that you've?
No, I haven't really had much of an opportunity to do that. I have done well with my collections. One thing I did was I sent letters to everybody that was in tax title, and said, hey, time to pay up, or I'm going to stop pursuing these things. I had several people that paid up, several people that have gone on payment plans, several that have just made significant payments towards their tax title. So I have managed to collect a fair amount. The next step is to start sending some of these over to an attorney and getting them into working on foreclosure and getting them ready to go. Now I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Stella will have time with the circumstances in the town clerk's office. She's also going to be kind of for the next few months bouncing back and forth there. But I'd like her to send out letters again to everybody. I'm going to stop with a certain few saying this is your absolute last chance, pay up or you're going into foreclosure and things like this, and start also working on land of low value.
Yeah, I found that sending out certified notice is good too, because at least you have the backup and the record to keep that.
Yeah.
You know, if it gets challenged later on, but also, you know, as many notices that you send out, it kind of goes. You know, you'll have what I call the frequent flyers and the people that don't. I don't want to say ignore it. You know, and nobody knows what each circumstance is, but until they receive a letter from the attorney, that's really when they start responding, because you can send as many notices as you want, and you know, until they get that attorney's letter that's representing the town, you see the collection rate even go further.
I would think so.
But there's an expense to that, so you know it's
Right. Right.
But it sounds like that's probably the next step you're looking at.
Yes.
Okay, good. What's the total? What, I guess, do you have a number for like the total delinquency? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I
what's outstanding?
do not have it.
That's okay.
Unless I don't, I'm at home tonight, so I don't have.
That's all right.
it
Yeah,
handy,
that's okay.
but I can get that for you, email it to you.
Yeah, I'm just curious what it would be.
Great. Anything else? Anything else, Gary?
No.
No. Okay, great. Thank you. Cindy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm just a little bit confused about something. I seem to recall last year on your line 29 computer software, the increase from, we'll call it 20,000 from the year before to 35,000 included it was for a specific purpose. It was for some debt software.
Yes, and we did not, in reviewing that, I'm still managing right now with the Excel. In reviewing that, I was hoping to get some additional debt book software, which I feel there's got to be other programs out there other than this one. This one, I felt quite expensive for what it would do. Still, like I say, I'm managing right now with Excel, and I think if I'm going to try to do a little more research on some of that. But in addition to that, there's an increase again here this year because Nicole and I are looking at, we have to get new software for the financial suite. The program we have right now is on the server and there's no room on the server. We're looking at getting a similar program, of course, but it's going to be cloud-based and will be far more efficient. Basically, the program we're using is no longer going to be supported with updates, etc. either. So we're looking into that.
So in that breakdown of the 47,000 that's being requested, you said that you moved professional services down. So is that 15 of that?
Right, about 14, 15 of that, I
Okay,
believe.
so
has been moved down.
that leaves 32. So what of the 32,000, what is that 32,000 comprise of?
I think it's the 32. The 32 is what's going to be for my portion of the annual fee on the new software,
Okay,
which is the collector and also treasurer.
okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Cindy. I don't see any other questions at the moment, so thank you for that budget. Sue, do you have other things to discuss, right? You have a debt budget as well.
The debt budget also. And the excluded debt for this year, the total will be $4,274,943.
And how much is that up by from fiscal 23?
All right, I'm gonna have to look at my other. That it's actually very close to fiscal 23. Not that one I want. This one.
Is the school fully borrowed, or is there still more to go?
They are pretty close. The school has a ban right now. So once they have not closed out with MSBA, once they close out with MSBA, we're anticipating, because they have about 2 million that they're holding back. We have a $2.5 million ban. So hopefully that extra 500,000 will be the remainder of what will need to be paid on the school, but we're pretty close on the school. The fiscal 23 was 4.3 and 4,350,000. Was that fiscal? Let me look. Which one do I have it? Yes. In excluded debt. So 4.3, and trying to switch between screens here. This year, it's 4.2. What did we do? Oh, we did manage to pay down some. We're paying down not the campground, Santos property, and this year. What happened is when we reconfigured, we had some money allotted to make an additional pay down on the school property, but when it was a ban, and so the financial advisor was not planning on paying it down, she put it through. We reconfigured, we were doing the roof and the school all at once. She did not put that through, so we allotted it to go to, it was budgeted there. So we're paying off the Santos property this year. So that's where you're seeing a little reduction there. And that will come off of the debt going forward for the future years, which isn't a bad thing, even though it's excluded. It was budgeted excluded, so we kept it under the excluded debt. And I just foresee that we're going to need to do more borrowing. One of my bigger concerns is the diamond situation. That this year we're looking at roughly 120,000, I believe. It's estimated still at this point. We just got notification that they're going out to bond on 25 million to start their project. And we don't know what the rate will be, and I'm anticipating the rates to be significantly higher than what was originally estimated for their whole project. And right now, with it being non-excluded, that's where my bigger concern is going to be. I'm expecting it to be long-term 500 plus per year for just diamond. And hopefully it will get passed to excluded debt for next year.
So Karen, can I ask a question on that?
Mhm.
So I guess I've been a little bit out of the loop since town meeting happened. Did the Diamond project been approved?
Well,
At
the
town
project
meeting,
itself, yeah. The
the
project
project
itself
was
is.
approved. Yeah, project was approved at town meeting and so forth, but it went to ballot in the fall and it was not voted excluded.
Okay, the ballot was just to determine whether or not it was gonna be included or excluded debt. The project is
Correct.
still happening. So it's gotta now be built into the budget for fiscal 24, are we saying, or 25?
24 it starts, and we're anticipating about 120,000 for 24. In future years, I'm expecting it to be 500,000 plus.
500,000?
Yes,
And how many years?
30, I would anticipate.
$500,000.
Yep, those are the numbers that, you know, we've been talking about for a long time. And that's why the ballot was trying to propose it as excluded debt, because this is a budget buster for the operating budget if it's 500,000 a year in the operating budget.
Yeah, I mean, not only for us, but what about communities like, Fall River? Let's take Fall River, for example, who was already paying for a Durfee.
Theirs could go, each town has to vote whether it's excluded or not. So theirs could be excluded.
Yeah. I mean, either way, in this instance, if it's excluded or not excluded, it's still a hit to the taxpayer. I mean, it doesn't matter that the taxes will go up, whether it's excluded or not excluded. It's just now that we've got to find this. I mean, 100,000 in fiscal 24, it's going to still be tight, but 500,000 going forward. I don't know. I just, I guess it's sticker shock if you want me to be honest with you. And I know we've talked about it in the past, but now that it's really, gonna be in fruition, and we're gonna stop having to build this budget around all these fixed costs. What's left for the operating budget? That's kind of not much, and it's gonna be tricky. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I've got some attached information on debt and calculation of debt and what it can cost us and so forth, and at various rates, 5, 7, 9%. And those are some realistic rates that I'm looking at if we do any future borrowing.
Yeah, I just had a couple of things come through today, and they're up around 4.9, 5.2. So that's now, and that's typically, if we look at more inflation in fiscal 25, that's just going to grow from there. So I don't want to say that maybe the quicker we can jump on allowing it to be included, maybe the better it is, because we'll probably mitigate some of that higher percentage rate on the interest cost. And I don't know if that's doable, or we'd have to have how that would play out.
With the Diamond situation, it's up to them to borrow the money.
Right.
We have no
Oh yeah, right. We're
say
just
on
gonna get an
when.
assessment, right? We're just gonna get the assessment.
Right.
Right. And I mean, if they're borrowing and at 7%, because they're going to do it similar to how we did. We did a $9 million ban, converted that to, I think it was actually a 4 million to a 9 million to a $10 million bond with another 7.5.
It could be 2 to 3 years before they get this fully bonded.
The total amount bonded, exactly.
Yeah.
And
it could
so
be about
some of
7%.
some of those could easily be at 7, and I've actually, in talking with some bankers, heard could be up closer to 9 or more.
I can't believe that would be 9% tax exempt. I mean, we haven't had 9% tax exempt rates for decades. I mean, we're not even close to that. Muni rates are still tracking about 80% of taxable. So, I mean, as Gary just mentioned, I mean, he's seeing 4.5%, 5%. I can't see numbers like 7 or even 9%. I mean, that seems way too high.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I get reports every week on borrowings, 25 million, 100 million or whatever in the state. And about, I want to say at the beginning of July, August, it was hovering about 4%. It is now 4.9%.
Right.
So just in a matter of 4 or 5 months, it's almost 1 basis point. So if you trend that out and inflation doesn't mitigate, you're looking at probably 6%. And so it's not too far. I mean, 1% is here or there, but I think I think the point is it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And we have to kind of put that in the back of our head that the interest rates are not going to get better. And that's what I'm hearing from all the advisors that we deal with. You know?
Yeah. Which is something for us to keep in mind on any borrowing that we need to do.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Sue? Sue, can you forward to me the your scheduled DE1? Was that filed already?
Yes, it was.
Okay, could you forward that to me? Because then I'll put together the tax rate itemization that I've been doing every year, so we can see, so a taxpayer can see exactly what their payments, what their tax rate is being based on, and how much is excluded debt, and exactly what excluded debt they're paying on. So I can do that once I get your schedule.
Okay, I'll do that tomorrow.
All right, thank you so much, appreciate it. Any other questions for Sue? Sue, do you have anything else to present?
Not really. I do have, like I say, if anybody wants to look at, I did submit a request to the capital improvement, request for money for stabilization. I think it's important that we start planning for the future and putting money into our stabilization. And included with that is some examples of the impact of borrowing at 5%, 5, 7, 9% or and such. So you can see how much the savings would be if we could get to a point where we're setting stuff aside into stabilization, which is essentially making our principal payments ahead of time and not borrowing.
Mhm.
What is the stabilization balances? Does anybody know?
We actually need to build that up. We're only at 1.3 million,
And it should be about 10% of the revenues,
right?
or 10% of the operating budget, sorry.
Right.
So we should be close to about 4 million, correct?
They're saying $4 to $5 million is what we should have in there.
Mhm.
So when was the last time the town had a rating?
August?
Yeah, it was just in the last year.
That's one of the comments in the rating, was that they keep saying to us that we should be adding to stabilization. We're in AA3 right now.
Yeah, and I think as time goes on and we don't make a commitment to chip away on that, we may see a decrease in the bond rating.
Which will
Because,
hurt our rates even more.
right, and then that just affects the borrowing rate. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of challenges ahead, and I think that, we talk about, we'll talk about the override, but I guess that's a little bit later. But there's a lot of financial challenges that the town faces that are big dollar items. We're not talking 100,000, we're talking millions.
Mhm.
And I think we really just need to look at this closer. Well,
Mhm.
thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sue, I have one quick question, actually. You were talking a little bit earlier where you were paying down some debt
Yes.
in various places. Who makes that decision on deciding to take available cash and pay down debt versus hold on to the cash that could potentially be used for other purposes like capital or funding?
Stabilization.
The stabilization fund. So who makes the decision when we're paying down debt before it's full schedule? Is that do you work with the town administrator? Does the select board make that decision? What happens?
Generally, I speak with our financial advisors and make the decision with them. We were reviewing it, like I say, in this case, it was kind of confusing because we were going back and forth with two different loans. Actually, I think a third loan was in there at the same time, and discussing things. And that's where in our budget to pay down debt this year, we had some monies that did not get paid down because it's a ban. A ban only has to be, you have to stop paying on a ban in the second year. I was looking at it, I had budgeted for it because I was thinking it was the second year. It was actually the first year. So she wasn't planning on making a pay down. I was. And so we switched the pay down to the campground. We said, let's get this out of here. The more that we can get out, because I just know we're going to be looking at other debt very soon for infrastructure, whether it be the septic on Route 6. There's been discussion about the high school. I know the old high school, there's discussion about doing things with the campground and things of this nature. So whereas these funds had been budgeted, we can continue to put them to the debt budget.
Mhm. Thank you for the answer. So, I'm just kind of thinking through that even though it was budgeted and then it wasn't needed for its intended purpose, they would otherwise, the dollars would have been turned back, just like
Right.
other departments that don't spend the money. And then that generates the free cash, which
think
then
that-
becomes available to fund, then other people can collectively make the decisions on how to use the free cash. Whether
Right.
it's, right, it
I
just
think
seemed,
that was me, Nicole, and I think Jim, I think we included Jim on a little bit of it, but I think it was mostly Nicole and I looked at it and said, yeah, we've got the money. Let's get this paid down and
Mhm,
apply the funds within the budget as budgeted.
mhm. Okay. Thank you for that. I don't see any other hands up, so I think if you get nothing else, we'll thank you for another very good presentation, and I appreciate your coming on nice and early in December for us to get a couple of budgets out of the way. So, and I'm happy to hear that you're fully staffed, and congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Sue.
Yep.
Okay. The second item that we had on our, thank you for that. So the second item we had on our agenda for tonight is our override discussion. And I see Jim is here with us. And Jim, maybe you can give us a little update on really where you are in the budget process, and if you've presented the budget yet to the select board, or what your time frame is, and give us a little sneak peek of maybe how it's looking. We haven't seen any roll up yet, so I know it's coming very soon. So maybe you can give us an update, and then that will lead us into talking a little bit about the override.
Sure. So as far as timing, I'm scheduled to present the budget to the Board of Selectmen on Monday night, the 19th. Whether or not they approve that, or I'm assuming we'll go on to the next meeting, January 9th. We're looking to get deadline to the Finance Committee. It's actually February 20th, but we should have a reasonable budget sometime in January, hopefully mid-January, that you could work with. I think once we present it to the Board of Selectmen, we can send that over to you, so you'll have those numbers. At least plug into your spreadsheets and get you going. Originally, the budget looked horrendous to the point where I didn't know how we were going to even possibly make it work. But the assessors came in with a new growth number, which was higher than expected, much higher. In fact, double what we anticipated. We had budgeted $400,000 for FY23. They came in at $847,000. So that put the initial deficit, I think, of like $600,000 on the town side, down to about $400,000. And we're able to, at least we'll be recommending some not filling of positions, some minor cuts, mainly not filling positions, not looking at layoffs at this point on the town side. But the school side is going to be more difficult. Their share, or their 54% of the net new revenue, is about just over $500,000, $550,000. Their negotiated salary increases to $632,000. So they're already in the hole. And when we look at that 500 some thousand, that is, we need to deduct the 300,000 that free cash that was allocated towards them last year. So it's only a $257,000 increase to the school budget, and they have 632,000 in negotiated salaries. So they're still working on their budget. Obviously, I think they'll be working on it for a few months. The town side, I think with this additional funding through the assessor's office, and they worked hard, you know, you got to give them credit for this. They got some new software they asked for last year, Near Maps, that allows them to look at the properties throughout the town with the aerial photos, and they can actually pick up a lot of the new growth that would have otherwise been missed. They picked up a lot of the docks along the river with this. Plus, we had some additional new growth through COVID. There were a lot of small projects that were done during the two COVID years, and those are coming into the new growth number. So last year we had a big number, new growth of 691,000, but that was when they changed their assessing calendar. So they picked up 18 months of new growth instead of the standard 12. We're back down to 12 from now on out. So last year and this year, good new growth numbers, but next year we anticipate that's going to drop again. We've pretty much been, 400 to maybe 500 on the high side over the last 7-8 years. So we're, at least in my budget, I'm proposing about 400,000 in new growth. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The budget's not sustainable without an override at some point. Even this year, I don't think we're going to be able to, we might be able to squeak by on the town side. The school side, I don't see how they can squeak by without either significant free cash or a number of layoffs. And the layoffs helped them this one year, and they're going to have to do the same layoffs next year because, even if they laid off a number of teachers, that doesn't necessarily reduce their negotiated raises the following year. So it will reduce it a little bit, but not the amount that they would need to bring us back within the $400,000 to $600,000 of new revenue that we anticipate for them on a yearly basis.
Yeah, it sounds like the only surprise to this budget is the good news about additional taxes on new growth, right? So we all talked extensively last year and about how disastrous last year was, and we were at the end of the road, and we anticipated this year to be more difficult because costs are rising and no revenue sources are coming through of any significance. And so, we know this is coming. And so at least it's a pleasant surprise where there's a little bit of additional revenue that helps cushion the blow. I'd be cautious to think that an override can wait another year. I think the option needs to be in front of the town, and the town can make its determination. But I don't think I don't want to see the town be at its last breath and to say, okay, now we're going to drastically have to do this unless it passes. And we're trying to avoid a drastic change. And so I hope the thoughts of the override are still in the works, and we're going to pursue that. So so you're presenting the budget to the select board next week, and are you going to be talking about the fiscal situation of the budget? Or are you going to be discussing in a potential override or conceptually where that's going to go, or is that too early of a conversation to have?
I think we've been kind of planting that seed little by little. Maybe we should be doing more. You can always do more, I guess. But, the last few meetings that we've had with the Board of Selectmen, we've had budget discussion items on there. And we've kind of stressed the need for additional funding coming from somewhere. And the override is the only option that we have. We've looked at everything else. They've asked us to look at the insurance, the GIC. We've done that. We've compared our health insurance plans with the state's GIC plans, and we're actually in a better situation, at least right now, with our existing plans. We've looked at other revenue sources. We don't have that. We've gone in and we dove into the Chapter 70 funding, which is the state aid it comes to state aid, but mainly geared towards the school reimbursements. And, it just doesn't work for the town of Westport. Our property values are high, our incomes are higher. And the different variables in that formula just don't work for Westport. They work for some other communities, but when communities like Westport, they don't. And that's why we're seeing such a difference between Westport and some of these other communities like Somerset, Swansea, Seekonk. State aid and the Chapter 70 money that they've been getting significantly more year to year than what we've been getting. So, yeah, there's not a lot of good news. I will say the new growth is good news. Our revenue projections that we've had the last couple of years are in line with what was projected, coming in a little bit higher. But we've been projecting very high against our local receipts over the last few years, 96% of actual, which is extremely high. It doesn't leave any room for error. I think we're down a little bit. Hopefully we can get down around 90% this year. Just because you don't know with inflation, right? We haven't been in this situation in a number of years. We don't know how things are going to slow down, if they're going to slow down, and if they are going to slow down, what it's going to impact. So yeah, I think, like I said, the revenue I think is in line with what we projected. New growth is good. It's just that we're at the point now where we can't sustain our budgets with the revenue that we're getting, and we don't have any other alternatives except an override.
Right. I just lost my question. Oh, is there, I found my question. Oh, Gary's got his hand up, so I bet he would be asking the same question. So I'm going to let Gary ask the question.
You know what it is.
I was trying to ask that, Gary. I was going to ask it, but I'll let you ask it.
Well, I guess I got a few questions here, Jim.
But ask the first one. Come on.
Yeah, okay. So we have certified free cash.
There we go.
What is it?
I'm going to defer to Nicole. I think we know what it is. We're around $2 million. I don't know if it's been certified. I believe it's been submitted.
It has not been certified yet. I'm still waiting on some numbers from Sue so we can submit. The recap has been submitted. I'm waiting on Chris Leonard, just a couple of questions so that we can get the tax rate set.
Yeah. So that's
yeah,
good news. I mean, if we're saying 2 million, I mean,
yes.
I think that's a little bit of good news. I mean, we've certified less in the past.
Right. That's just a guesstimate. This is my first year doing it all by myself.
Yeah.
So, hopefully I didn't make too many errors or didn't correct something that should have been corrected from the previous town accountant. But that's my first guess.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's not bad news. I think that's pretty good news that we're going to get maybe a little bit more than we've gotten in the past. The other couple of questions I had was, as far as the marijuana and solar, how have we budgeted that? Are we budgeting conservative with that? I mean, I don't know if we've received anything from the marijuana facility or what you've baked into the budget for solar. Can you speak a little bit about that, Jim?
Yes. So the solar is in the budget. The pilot agreements, the ones that are up and running that we know we're going to be up and running this year, are in the budget. The Brookwood Solar one just off Main Road was the last one that came in. That's about $100,000 a year. That is included in the budget. The marijuana is not included as of yet. They haven't opened up the recreational portion yet. We're talking about that today. And actually, I want to check in with Buzzy. I know Buzzy did a report on that last year or the year before, and I can't find the copy of the report that he sent me just to see what those revenues are. I know the revenues have come down quite a bit from some of the other communities over those first couple of years. But yes, that's one of the few things that really the only thing that I'm aware that hasn't been included in the new revenue.
So you've balanced the budget, but not without a lot of pain, obviously, and tweaking a lot of these numbers. And I went to a meeting with the MMA, Mass Division of Local Services, and I think Nicole was at that meeting. And, they were up there, the Department of Revenue was up there saying, we've generated all this revenue and we've generated all these additional amounts of and sources of revenue for the town. We saw that with like the income, getting back money back, on your income for pension, that's salary tax or whatever. But what really concerns me is it never makes it back to the cities and towns. So if you're up there bragging about how much money that you've generated above and beyond the benchmarks of prior year, then shouldn't there be some kind of connection between the local legislature, and I'm talking our cities, our reps, I'm talking whoever's involved, to the squeaky wheel gets the grease, in my opinion. And if we're not out there at the state level saying, listen, do you really want us to have to force an override for, and cut services? And I know we're not the only person, city and town doing this or in this situation, but I think that we're in, if you looked at Bristol County, for instance, just in Bristol County, how many other communities in Bristol County are struggling to the point that we're at? If you went around and looked at and did an analysis for other communities in this county, and you saw their reserve levels for stabilization, you saw what they certify in free cash, I can guarantee you it's a lot more than what Westport does. So there's an inherent problem. And I know that we want to push an override and we want to talk about that, but I think also in combination with that, there has to be some kind of legislation push and, lighting the fire to say, listen, guys, we want to get through these. We don't want to have to start cutting and slashing people out of these payrolls. We don't want to have to close fire departments like was done in 2008 in a lot of communities. So I guess the question is that their engagement between the town of Westport and our local officials? Because I can't see how one division of the state is saying we're flushing cash, but yet it's not trickling down to cities and towns. I can't reconcile that.
Short answer is yes. We've engaged them quite a bit. I think in last year's budget, I think the senator increased the line items for the pilots to state-owned land, which benefited the town of Westport. I think $200,000, maybe plus or minus additional. But a lot of it's formula-based, right? And the formulas just don't work. And when we talk about surrounding communities, let me just share my screen here and just quickly go through. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just to give you an idea of why we're in the position and some of these other communities aren't. Right? So this is just a chart showing from 2015 to 2023. And this is the increase in Chapter 70 funding. Westport, we went up 393,000. So if you look at our 2015 number and our 2023 number, we're almost $400,000 in the positive. Somerset's over 5 million, Swansea's 3.3 million, Seaconk's 2.2 million. And this is just this 1 year. So if you back this up over the 8 years, Swansea's probably got a total of maybe $20 million, $25 million more than we have just in Chapter 70.
This is exactly my point right here. And
well, part of that too, Gary, is that we've had a decline in enrollment during this period of time of about 25% of the students in town. So one of the things we learned from Chapter 70 is that the money follows the student. So our enrollment went down about 25%. As soon as that middle school was closed and kids were getting put into the high school, people left. I mean, they went to private school, so our Chapter 70 money significantly was impacted. These other communities didn't feel the same kind of impact as that.
Yeah, so, and I agree to some extent to that, but this is one snapshot. I mean, this is 2015 to 2023. So in other communities like Somerset, I know that they've built a regional school. And so there's different variables in all these communities, but that is way off the charts, in my opinion. I mean, just take the lowest, take Duxbury, for instance, 1.5 million. I mean, that's a small community, 1.2 million. So the point is, I think, Jim, this is a great chart. This is an eye opener. And this is only chapter 70 money. How about chapter 90? How about, you can go down the list. So this is important information, I think, not only for an override, but for the officials that represent these communities to say, listen, we're way off the mark. You can take all the variables you want. We are way off the mark. And I think that instead of us trying to, say, well, it justify, okay, it was this and that. I think we need to come to the realization that Westport's been shortchanged, in my opinion, just by looking at the numbers.
Well, we went through these charts with Senator Rodrick and with Representative Schmidt. We went through these numbers with them. I mean, they're certainly aware of that. The formulas were applied evenly to each one of these communities. We just happen to have all of those variables wrong. So Senator Rodrick was able to get $1 million for Route 6. As Jim said, he was able to get a couple of $100,000 extra for the state-owned land and for some other things. I mean, they've tried to do what they can. I'm not saying that they did enough, but they have been engaged in trying to help us in any ways that they can. But we spent an hour on the phone with the people that do the Chapter 70 funding to go through those variables in Westport. Why are we getting screwed? And a lot of it has to do, as Jim said, we're a wealthy community. Our per capita income is higher than the others. Our land value is very high compared to the others on a per capita basis. So, we're land rich and pocketbook poor. There's no question about that. So that cap keeps getting hit all of the time because we have such a dichotomy of circumstances here in our town. So the wealthy end tends to end up hurting the not so wealthy end because it drives the numbers up. And it's a big problem.
Well, I mean, I would just say that I think that more has to be done for this community, and if it's on the way of grants, if it's on the way of looking at Chapter 90 funds, Chapter 70, I think that, like I said, this is the first time I'm seeing this chart, and it's an eye opener, and it's kind of reflective of what I'm trying to push forward here. I'm not saying that they don't do enough. I'm not saying that they don't do anything. I just think that it needs to be front and center. And this needs to be really, if the variables are there that we're doing, that something was not in our favor, then tell us how we get to the point where we're in the blue, and not in the red. At least let us be in the blue. I mean, this is great. So, okay, thanks, Jim. I think you're doing a great job with the budget, and you did. This is what we're left with. I mean, I'll just say that from when you've taken over. From what we had, the reporting is phenomenal.
I look forward to seeing the rest of the charts on that presentation that you have. So
I will send them over to you. I will show this one real quick. This is the other one that, and I think we all know it, but this is the other one that makes a difference on our,
Jim, could you hold up for 1 second? Because Buzzy has a question. So just in case it's on something that we're going on. Buzzy, you can go ahead.
It's not so, well, I guess it is a question to Cindy. When you say we've already talked to Mike and Paul, you mean our Westport Fiscal Stability Committee?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we need to make that clear. Yes. That Westport Fiscal Stability Committee, which meets early on Wednesday mornings. Gary, a lot of us share your opinion about this and have pressed that opinion with them. But it seems to me more than appropriate for the Finance Committee to independently want to talk to Senator Rodriguez and Representative Schmidt, have them come in. So I would recommend that we do that.
I agree. I 100%.
That's a good idea.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
We should send him an invitation.
We should. Absolutely.
And just
You can't look. We can't look at these things in isolation or in stovepipes or in this committee talking to these people, because this affects the whole town. this is the schools. We were just talking about how the school budget request is giving us fits because of what the negotiated salary increases or whatever, and we've just built this new school with all this great promise, and now what, we have to cut teachers. So we have a great building but no fewer people in it. I mean, this is an untenable situation.
Yeah, just one quick comment. When I mentioned the negotiated raises on the school department, their contract was 2%, 2, 2, and 2. They have steps and ladders, which increases it a little bit more as well, but their package wasn't overly beneficial to all the teachers. So, and this is just the last one. You've seen this before. This just tells you how much we're spending in school assessments, charter school, and school choice. And I couldn't find another community that was, and I probably looked at maybe 15, 18, maybe even 20 of them that was as close as we were in paying out for charter school and school choice. So between the money that we don't get on the Chapter 70 side and the money that we're putting out on the school choice and charter school side, that's pretty much made the difference in the overall budget.
Mhm.
So.
Well, thank you for that. We look forward to seeing the charts. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Jim? Jim, I wanted to, go ahead, Cindy, go ahead.
Well, it wasn't so much a question, really just a statement. I mean, just something as simple as, the chart that he just showed, with $1.5 million in assessments that we pay to charter schools. You combine that with the lack of Chapter 78. I mean, even if it washed out to $1 million extra, just think how much better life would be here if we had just $1 million more. And going back to what Gary said, I think it is pitiful that the state was drowning in cash, billions of dollars extra. And, every person that received their check from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, from the Department of Revenue as a, rebate back on their taxes, I'm sure were appreciative of it. But if we were given $10 million that we had to just put in the bank and live off of the income, or $10 million just spread around to fix a few things, $10 million out of the billions that they had would have made all the world of difference to us. I mean, we're not talking about major money here. Small amounts of money at this point would make a big difference in what we can fix, what we can do, just being able to achieve things. I mean, it really is a shame that our backs are up against the wall, that just a small amount of money would really fix. And they had $3 billion extra, $3 billion extra. And yeah, some people got paid, and actually the lower income people received practically nothing because they didn't pay any income tax to the state. So the only people that really benefited from a lot of this, from the rebate, were the people that were in higher income, and it doesn't benefit your local community. So that's my rant. Sorry. It just irritates me to no end.
Thank you. We all need to rant sometimes, right?
Yeah, sure.
Jim,
She's
it
not
might-
wrong.
it might be a little premature, but I wanted to just bring the conversation up since you're here. There's been a number of, very, very unofficial conversations about an override. And I think we're familiar, if an override were to pass, it's a two-step process. It needs to go to the ballot to get approved, and it also needs to go to town meeting, and then the budget gets approved and appropriated. The order of those can be any which way. We had talked last year, the intent last year was to have gone to last year's annual town meeting with our budget B concept, which was our override budget, and asked the town to appropriate the funds. And then, but then of course at the last minute, we didn't have enough information. So we wanted to come up with a better methodology to come up with what is a reasonable number. So we didn't pursue the override article at town meeting. So there's been some unofficial conversations going on about, but one possibility is to present an override at the ballot in April before the town meeting, appropriates it. And I'm just wondering, has the select board discussed it, decided on it? Is it still early? I have an opinion on on the order of things, but it's just my opinion. I don't know. I think we all want to do whatever it is. I think we want to try to collectively, of course, be on the same page, but also do whatever it is that would make it most likely that it would pass. And so I'm just wondering what the concept is. And if it were to be on the April ballot, when would be a deadline to be able to have to submit that for then?
I believe the question is 34 days before the April election. We have to get it to the town clerk's office.
And the April election is what, early April? So does that make it mid-February then, or approximately?
I may have it here. Hang on one
It's
minute.
actually the beginning of March. I asked Bernie that the other day because
Okay,
the April election's around the 14th.
okay.
Just looking here, I may have it. Yeah, there's not a lot of time, no matter how we do it.
And of course, the other alternative is to present at town meeting and then have a special election, right? And that's going to be within 90 days or something like that, right? From the town meeting. Is that about right?
Yeah, so this gives you a little idea. If the annual election ballot question is April 11th, we would need 34 days. So you're looking March 6th, we would have to have a vote by the Board of Selectmen to place it on the ballot.
So that's not a whole lot of time.
No.
About 2 months.
Yeah, so in general, I think we would need direction by the end of January, the latest, as to hopefully an amount and a game plan going forward.
Mm-hmm. And is that to be discussed pretty soon at the select board level? Because with 2 months, you don't have that much time, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that'll be brought up on Monday night. I think they'll probably be concentrating more on the budget itself, but yeah, they're aware of the timeline. I think we all.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
It's always going to be a rush,
Right.
even if we extended it to a vote in September, it's going to be a rush in July and August. I think it's just the way government moves.
yeah, okay. Well, maybe we can, maybe after the select board discusses it, we can kind of, it's clearly, whatever goes on the ballot is the select board's discretion. It's not a finance committee vote, at all. That's clearly the select board's purview, but I think we all want to do things that would be in the most likeliness for, to have it pass. And so maybe we can talk about that at some other point on strategy and what might be the best strategy.
Yeah, agreed. Like I said, we probably have till the end of January to finalize
Yeah.
things.
Right. Yeah. There's no good answer, right? So, and we don't have great we don't have a good track record amongst Westport itself for passing overrides, and there's not a great track record for other communities that have been super successful. So it's not like there's a model, path. If you do this, then, you're likely so most overrides fail in most communities. And so there's no methodology that we can choose. I guess, I'm only concerned really from a standpoint of having potentially bringing it to the ballot before it's appropriated feels like it's a harder sell to the community, because you're asking for not quite an open checkbook, but you're going to the ballot, and you don't necessarily have how the funds are going to be appropriated, or it's a wild card, because when it gets to town meeting, it could be appropriated in a way that town meeting dictates, not as recommended by the finance committee or the select board. So seems to be a risk to go to the ballot first and then appropriate second. But, I'm sure there's pros and cons in all of it. So I was just curious and open for discussion at some point, just conceptually, because I think we all clearly know we need an override, and we all want to do whatever we can to try to make it as successful as possible. Gary, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so I remember last year when we were talking about the override, and this is I'm not speaking negatively about the schools, but we had on the town side, and I think even maybe Jim at this point right now for fiscal 24 could tell us exactly what that means to if we didn't pass an override. He knows what cuts will be in place. He knows what services won't be performed. So I think that this side of the house is done. Now, it may be helping the school department during their budget process if we want to engage with the schools to have this override put through. They need to do the same exercise and tell us, okay, it means 5 teachers, it means this program's being cut. And I think maybe, I can't remember right now, but I don't know if we got that last year. I think we got a list of, it looked like positions, if I remember. And that's what potentially the override was needed. But I know that beyond positions, there's programs that would be affected. So I think in order to really hone in on what will happen if it doesn't happen, if an override doesn't happen, we really need to let the taxpayers know, hey, this is what it means. You may not get your street plowed. We may have 2 trucks on the road instead of 3. So that's really what I think helps to pass an override. And not just, like you said, an open check to fill in a gap. The other question I had too was, it's probably too early to talk about capital, right? So are they meeting? They're meeting.
Yes.
I'm supposed to be engaged in some of that, but I just haven't had a chance, but I'll hopefully make the next meeting. But with 2 million in free cash, that doesn't really go a long way for capital. So that probably in fiscal 24 will take maybe a back burner. Maybe we won't be able to do everything. But I know in the past we've contributed to the schools on a lot of their projects. But I think going forward, like we don't have a lot of time. If we're talking March, maybe we have a discussion with the schools prior to this to say, listen, if you kind of know now what that gap might be, can you at least tell us what the programs might be and get a sense of if there is a cut, what will that cut entail? How many teachers? How many, that might be a prudent exercise to go through.
It's my understanding that they are working on something like that now. What the
Okay.
final form will be, I'm not sure, but they realize where we are with the budget. They know what, at least in my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, what I'm proposing, and it's significantly less than what they need just to meet not even their minimum requirements. So they are planning now as to what that would mean to them if that's all they got.
Okay.
Right. And Jim, your proposal is based on the 54% split that traditionally that we've executed. So, okay. Any other questions for Jim on the override or anything else to discuss at this time? So I think once we see the numbers, Jim, and then we'll kind of can start to jump in. Very
Sounds
soon.
great. Hopefully we
Yeah.
can get those to you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for joining in. Appreciate it.
You guys have a good night.
All
Take
right,
care.
thanks, Jim. Okay, anybody else have anything on the override, or we talked enough on that? Yeah, okay, great. All right, so the next item on the agenda is committee updates and liaison reports. Does anyone have anything to add from any committees that they might be on? Cindy.
Let's see, I have two things. Well, one is coming up tomorrow night. I don't know what the agenda is because I have not seen it. Tomorrow night, there is a long-term building committee meeting. So, but I don't know specifically what the agenda is for that. But both Gary and I are on the personnel board. I don't even know at this point which one of us is the at-large and which one is the finance committee representative. But there was a request which has been put on hold for reclassification of a position. And I'm a little bit concerned that it's going to kind of open up the gates. It's, they can fully justify it. I'm not saying that it's unjustified, but a way to get people, more increases in their salaries, to reclassify some of their positions. So we'll see. We saw it in the the treasurer's office was forced to do that. I'm not saying that it wasn't warranted, nor is this other position for the zoning board of appeals. I'm not saying it's not warranted, but I think more and more of those things are going to be creeping in because it's so difficult to find people. Who knows what's going to happen with, the town clerk right now. The town clerk's office doesn't even have a clerk in that office. So once the town clerk leaves, they need to have someone in there that knows what they're doing. As Sue said, that, Stella is kind of going back and forth a little bit and trying to help out. But that's a serious situation over there that's going to happen 3 weeks time. Don't know what's going to happen there. So I think we're going to be challenged. And Gary actually brought up a good point at the personnel board that maybe we could even apply for some ARPA money for this. I've been thinking about this a little bit more, to have a very broad-based salary assessment done for the town. Because the personnel board, we get these one-offs, and they're usually emergency type items. Well, this needs to be fixed because that person left, and the only way I can hire somebody is to pay them this. We saw that with the planning board. Our back is always up against the wall without having good comparative data to go and look at for other towns and to see, even within the town, we have positions that are either labeled the same or they're effectively the same job, but they're paid differently. And to have a salary assessment done throughout the town. One of the members, Lawrence's wife, as a matter of fact, Nancy, who is in HR at UMass, said that something like this could be done, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at most. There's certainly a lot of upper money that's available that perhaps we'll take it to the ARPA group. I'm going to talk with Gary a little bit about this because this was Gary's idea, which I think was an excellent idea, to pursue this, which I think is long overdue for the benefit of all of the employees and for the benefit that we're doing the right thing when we're making these decisions, because sometimes we're just doing it in a vacuum. And because somebody's, pressing to have it done. So anyway, that's my report from the personnel board, that I think that we've got, it may cost some money, but I think it's something that things have gotten out of whack for too long and need to be addressed. Gary, you have anything to add to that? No.
Just to the point that, you know, a reclassification study would also be, give us good job descriptions.
Right, right.
And, you know, we're looking at sometimes job descriptions that are archaic, they're done on a whim. And there's really no professionalism. I don't want to say this, but there's really no professionalism as to what was being put into the thought process in the job descriptions. I've been on the personnel committee for probably about 4 or 5 years now, and we would get job descriptions that didn't even include a salary range. So we're in the position where we're going to try to recommend to hire somebody, but we don't even know what the capability of that person. We don't know anything about it. So, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been trying to try to push some kind of salary survey. I think the ARPA funds are a good. It's short money, and it not only benefits the employee, and it helps with keeping these employees, because now in the market, you know, they're comparing town against town. If we don't do the salary survey, they certainly will, and they'll go to another community and try to, you know, and it also brings in the point where they're not pitting an employee against an employee in the same union within the town itself. So it's a real good exercise, and it's a good benefit to have it, and have the Board of Selectmen review it, potentially adopt it, and then that's the basis and the framework for how the town moves forward, and not only hiring, but compensation, job descriptions, so on and so forth. And lacking a personnel department, I think it's needed, because they don't only come to us. I can imagine that they're also going to the town administrator, they're going to the union reps, and they're, you know, where it's just something that's standardized, it helps everybody out.
Mm-hmm.
Right, particularly since you brought up, since we don't have a human resources department, we don't have a human resources head, we don't have anyone, you know, like you said, it ends up on, you know, Jim's doorstep. It ends up in the personnel board. People don't know who they should be going to. It's all out of whack. So we really need to nail down some parameters and some ranges. I mean, many of the you know, the positions under the personnel board do not have steps. They do not have ranges. I mean, I guess principal clerk might be a 3-year and a 5-year differentiation, but there are no ranges. There are no. It's very old school. It goes.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's all over.
Well, I think that, you know, the interesting thing to me from what some conversations I've had, part of the free cash number is derived from the turnbacks from departments that don't spend the money. And, you know, if you don't spend the money, it turns into free cash. And so we saw the turnback money this year. It's pretty significant in a lot of departments. And a lot of the turnbacks are from the salary lines that people didn't hire who was in the budget. And the reason, you know, peeling that back, the reason why the hiring didn't happen is because the town of Westport can't find quality people at the price that's in the budget. So, you know, there's clearly an issue with Westport underpaying its employees. And so it can't hire. It's got these open positions and it has not been able to hire. And that's why the turnbacks were so significant this year. And that's why free cash is so significant. So it's not it's not this wonderful thing. It ends up being good that there's free cash, but when you think about why that is, that's a problem. So it's a problem for Westport to not be paying people at or near market wages. And when people leave, you cannot hire somebody at the amount. And so that's a problem. And so I think, you know, you're right. Looking at the salaries is an important thing. So, you know, it is an issue. So it's not just an exercise that we should do it. I think it's a problem. And as more employees leave to go to greener pastures, the town's not going to be able to replace them at the same dollar amount that the employee was leaving.
Right, and
you know,
to that, and also to that point, there's an expense to replacing that person. Let's take police, for instance. You know, they come here, they get the training, great. They leave us, we're left with the bill, they go to another community. Why not retain that officer?
Mhm.
Why not, you know, you can go through every single line item and every single duty in the town. You know, you can go from highway, you can go all the way down the list, and not only department heads, but clerical. So for short money, at least we would have a base, and we can
Mhm.
say, okay, wherever you are, we put you in that slot, and then from there on, you have a step, you have a grade, and you work towards that step and grade.
Right.
And then, you know, there's COLAs involved and things like that. I just think it's fair for the employee, and it kind of streamlines everything. That's kind of what I was thinking when I'm trying to
Yeah.
get
And,
this
and
pushed.
it's done by an independent firm. So, I mean, no one
Correct.
can say that, you know, well, oh yeah. sure.
Unbiased.
Yeah, exactly. Unbiased.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I think there's a couple of questions that are popping up. So Lawrence, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add to what what Gary was saying a few minutes ago there, and in response to what you were just commenting on as well, Karen. You know, it's more than just salaries though, and it sounds like you know in employee retention and employee engagement terms, you know, having a proper framework of equivalent roles across different departments and not just on the salary bandwidths, but also in the requirements for the role. And part of the reason why we might not, you know, part of the reason why we might struggle to refill roles when they're vacated is if, as Gary was saying, you know, if we don't have a decent comprehensive job description for that role, or a clear cut understanding of what the requirements and the you know, the ideal candidate should possess. You know, it might be that it might be more complicated than just simply, well, we're pitching too low. You know, if we just throw more money at it, we'll get a good result. It could also be that we're just, you know, we're pitching the wrong thing. So, you know, for all those reasons, doing some sort of study and implementing some kind of proper framework would benefit. Yeah, it would have tremendous amount of benefit for employees as well as across the town, as well as for the town administration as well too, and ultimately for the taxpayer too, because we'd be getting, you know, we'd be getting good value for money. We'd be getting the best we could get. So yeah, I would wholeheartedly support what these guys are suggesting.
Mhm. Thank you, Lawrence. Bob, you got your hand up?
Both Gary and Lawrence, I think, hit the nail on the head. An example, today I was at the cemetery at Beech Grove talking to the superintendent. He told me they had 132 applications to work a summer job, weed whacking, mowing lawns, and other odd jobs at the cemetery. Of the 132 applicants, none accepted a job in Westport. None. Zero. Both the police chief and the fire chief have constantly told me you have to be a paramedic to go in the fire department now. And we are competing with every other town and city, salary and benefit wise. And they're here for a few years, see what other communities offer, and immediately leave. So unless we have a multifaceted approach to this problem is not unique to any one department. It's unique to every place. In Westport, the school department pays a clerk $10,000 more per position than we pay in the town. So we're competing against ourselves, department to department, because there's no guidelines as to what the job entails and what it's worth. And until that is addressed, you're not going to solve this issue.
Yep, that's, thanks, Bob. Yep, Gary, Cindy, Lawrence and myself are all saying the same thing. So we're all, and yourself too. So, absolutely. Any other, comments on this? No, okay. Any other committee meetings? Oh, sorry, go ahead, somebody, Zach, go ahead, Zach.
No, just for the next committee update.
Oh, okay, go
I didn't
for
have
it.
a comment on that.
Yep,
Yeah,
go for it.
so I was traveling and I missed the entirety of the last Agriculture and Open Space Committee meeting, but I have been in contact with the committee just kind of to get an update and see where they're at. And I had more of like a feeler question that I wanted to propose to you guys. So recently, Buzzards Bay Coalition acquired the property on Main Road, the Petty property, if you're familiar with that. And they basically have come to Agriculture and Open Space and asked if they wanted to recommend that funding be provided through, and let me look at my notes here to make sure I get this straight. Basically, in 2008, the $2 million for the land protection is kind of running towards its end, but there's still roughly $80,000 left of that money. Does it make sense to the finance committee, especially in the climate we're in right now, to spend the remaining amount on this Petty project? A little background too is we don't really have hard numbers on their budget, and just as an update, they will be going to the CPC to seek to see if there's ability for funding on there. From there, that'll be held this Thursday. So really the question is, does it make sense for Agriculture and Open Space to suggest the expenditure of what's remaining there for this project for Buzzards Bay Coalition?
It's an interesting question. I can only comment that I can't even begin to comment on it because I don't know what other opportunities they may want to spend money on. So, without being on the committee and really being active to understand, I always look at, should you spend the money or not spend the money? That's one question. But if you spend it on this, what do you not spend it on? That might be something that might be more appropriate or not. So I couldn't even begin to answer that question without fully understanding the projects and what other opportunities there would be. So I don't have the basis of knowledge to be able to even answer that question.
Okay.
Who covered them before, Karen? Do you know?
I want to say Kevin.
Could be. I don't remember. I don't remember.
It's a good question. I mean, Kevin never brought to the committee a question of that. It's a good question, but that's more for the Ag Committee, I think, to really respond to. I'm not sure. I don't.
Yeah, and
just to let you know, there's 83,500 left in that account or available to be spent. It would need to be borrowed. And
Right.
one of the things that I always look at is what gain would the town get from this particular purchase? Is it, is the town going to have public access to it? Is it going to have gained something that's not already there? I mean, with Buzzards Bay owning it, are we going to really, is it going to be a significant increase, that 83,000 value to the town in this case?
Right. Opposed to something like that happened at the DePaul Center off Adamsville Road where we have public access.
Correct.
And we can use that space as a community. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, you raise a great question, Zach, and I always I always ponder this myself, and, you know, I don't have the answer, but, you know, in your example, right, you're a finance committee rep on the committee. And so what does that mean, right? That means you're you're on the committee looking at it through the financial eyes and how it impacts. But is your vote per se supposed to be representative of us as a whole? Like, are we supposed to be talking amongst ourselves and then you're our representative, or are you really independent in your vote as a committee? And I don't have the answer to that, but I've always felt that your question's a great one and that should be asked more of the committee. So even though you're independent on the committee, like, you are representing the finance committee. So there should be some sort of guidance or some sort, you know, that you're carrying forth, right?
Yeah, and please, like, inform me if this is the wrong form for that, you know, kind of
It's a great question. And I honestly wonder that all the time when we are on committees and committee members will vote in some capacity on the other committee. Well, what's your vote? Is your vote supposed to be as a finance committee representative? So does that mean your vote is carrying what we think, or are you an independent voter just on the committee? You happen to be a rep on the committee. And I don't know the answer to that. And that's, you know, it's a great question. And maybe some folks, other, you know, tenured either members here or from other committees can help answer what that's supposed to be. But it's a great question.
And I already got a good speaking point on it as a follow-up question to the committee. You know, my first question was, well, what are the hard numbers here? What is this going to be spent for? What's the budget for this particular project? And that wasn't available yet. And that's what I anticipated some of the feedback from you guys. But yeah, I personally want to know the question that Sue brought up is truly, you know, what is the gain to the community here? If we're going to be spending the funding that the town has, how is it going to enhance that? You know, so I thought that was a good point. And that's kind of just what I was looking for, is just a little bit of a team advice here. You know?
Yeah. No, thanks. But you did raise the bigger question that I always think about, like, what vote is, you know, what's carried. But yeah, realistically, you would vote on the committee, and then if it was an article that would be on town meeting, then the finance committee would, you know, vote on the article separately, whether or not it was supported or not. But yeah, seek out any other support. I can't answer anything. I'm not involved in that committee.
Good. Yeah, I figured it would be a quick one, and I appreciate the input, Sue.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And did you have any other committees that you're on right now, or is that the one big one that you have?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And the rest are just liaison assignments.
All right. Anybody else on committees? I know I've been curious, Lawrence, are you on the infrastructure committee, or have you been attending the meetings? Is there anything of interest that we need to be alerted to on that committee?
No, I think Bob is actually the official representative on the infrastructure committee. I'm on the long-term building committee, and so there's a meeting of that one tomorrow evening.
Okay.
So after,
because I know when Bob was not able to attend meetings, I thought we intended to reassign, and I thought you were going to kind of jump on that one, but okay. So we might not have had.
I did go to one of their meetings. That was when Senator Senator Rodrigues and Representative Schmidt were there. And it was kind of a rundown on a number of different possible funding avenues that might be that could be taken with the Route 6 septic question. It's kind of more of a round table discussion around that, and that was the only meeting of that committee that I went to.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bob's got his hand up. He might shed some light. So Bob?
Karen, I will be forwarding to you and the rest of the committee some notes I've got from Maury May, who heads the committee as the secretary, as to where we stand in that program. Unfortunately, I was in the hospital. I fell and broke my left hip while also being treated for cancer. So I was in 2 different hospitals back and forth. So at the next meeting we have here, I'll have that detailed material with me.
Okay, that sounds perfect, Bob. Because last I heard, there might be an article on the warrant, so it'd be just interesting if that's the case, or just to get, get some understanding. But
Yeah.
all right. Thank you, Bob. If no other committee comments. All right, so the next item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of November 8th, 2022. If we've had a chance to read those.
So moved.
Looking for a second. Bob, Gary, second. Thank you, Gary. Any discussion on the minutes? If not, I'll do a roll call. Cindy?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Bob? I
Yes.
think he said yes earlier. I think we might have lost Buzzy. I don't think he's here. Is he? He's not here. Okay, and I, Karen Rouse. Yes, aye. Thank you. Topics for next meeting and meeting schedule. So I forwarded to everyone. Should have 4 consecutive weeks in January, and we'll be focusing on budget meetings. The schedule is sitting in our December drive of those departments who have responded to our inquiry for the schedule. So if I can email it out, if you can look, if you're a liaison and your department has not yet responded, if you could contact them so we can get them scheduled, because once we can then publish the schedule for our next meeting, which is in the first week in January, will be our next FinCom meeting, and we'll have budgets lined up. So I'd like to get the rest of the schedule firmed up. And as a liaison, we're asking you to make sure we get everyone's budget materials. So people should be submitting either through you or their memos and their budgets or anything else they want to discuss. And we're asking to get those, now. They're all done, so we want to have them so we as a committee have time to review them. So we're not getting them either the day of the meeting and we're trying to review them. So if we can review them in advance, then we can have more pointed questions rather than trying to review things right online. So gather the material. So I'll send out that email. So again, as the liaison for your department, if they have not scheduled, please contact them to get them to schedule and ask them for budget materials.
I did confirm the town clerk will come in on January 3.
Great.
It's not on that list. I'll make sure it gets added to the list.
Okay, we can add it in. Okay,
Because
and we do have
her last day is January 6th. So
okay, and I did schedule with the schools. So for February 7th or 8th, the 7th is when the school will come in. So that's that should be our school budget date. Since we have no school liaison, I got that one scheduled. Okay, so I have no correspondence. I have no topics within 48 hours. And so I would, does anyone else have anything else they want to add before we adjourn? Looks like not. So then I would entertain if someone wants to make a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Looking for a second. Okay, Cindy second. All
Second.
right, so let's see, we're losing people here. Cindy,
Oh, aye.
Zach,
Aye.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Bob.
You're
Bob
muted.
muted.
Aye.
Thank you. And it looks like we lost Gary. And so me, I adjourn. Let's go. See you later. Good
Alrighty.
night.